Hi, it's Jo from Minerva. I'm here with somewhat of a part 2 to the Mabel Dress sew along, which I've already posted, and this is the pattern, and I've shown how to make the dress with the elasticated sleeves, which is view E, and in the kit there's enough fabric to make the hat as well. There's 1.3 meters of fabric, and there is also a packet of lightweight interfacing so that you can make the hat also. The hat's quite simple to make, these few stages here, but it does involve quite a bit of cutting out because you need to cut out 8 pieces for the outer hat and 8 pieces for the inner hat. Make sure that you fold your fabric so that you're cutting out 2 at a time, and also that you cut the right size because the pattern goes from 6 months to age 4. The cutting out is 3 simple pattern pieces. There is a brim, so you will need to cut 1 brim on the fold and another brim on the fold with interfacing on the back. I've shown you the 2 hat pieces as they're on the hat. So there's 2 side pieces, one for this side, one for the other half of the hat, and then there's 2 pieces of hat front and back. So there's 2 on the front and 2 on the back, so I'll show you what I mean. So you've got a side and a side, hat, 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 and then you will repeat that to make the hat lining, and you don't need to interface that. You can just make that in the Liberty Lawn fabric. I have actually interfaced it just because it was a beautiful interfacing, really light, and it just really crisped up the hat. So I've interfaced my lining as well as my hat. The 2 hat pieces are really similar, so it's important to put the notches on. So you can see this one's got 2 notches and 1 notch. That indicates that it's the 2 for the front of the hat and 2 for the back, and the side piece has just got 1 notch on each side, so you know that that one is the one that goes on the side. They look so similar that it's you must put the notches on. Also, I didn't take my pattern pieces off my triangles, I left them on, and while I was constructing the hat I made sure that I was taking a hat piece off the hat side piece pile, or I was taking a hat piece from the front or back piece. So I kept them in their piles with the paper pieces pinned on, and I was just taking them off the piles as I needed them. That's a really good tip. The seam allowance is 1 centimetre, so I'm using a magnet seam guide which has got a strong magnet in the back. You look on the measurements on the foot plate, and I'm going to put it on 1 centimetre. Then I can run my fabric along the edge of the seam guide here. And that helps you keep the seam allowances all the same, and it's really important that you do that, because if you imagine there's 8 pieces in the top of the hat, so if you add a couple of mil or lose a couple of mil on 8 different seams, it very soon makes up for an inaccuracy that makes the hat brim really difficult to fit. You're either trying to stretch the brim or you've got puckers in the brim, so it's really important that you keep the seam allowance at 1 centimetre. You need to be pressing your hat as you go along, and that can be a little bit difficult with a normal iron, because if you're pressing the seam open you're going to overheat the interfacing on either side of the seam allowance. So you could try a few things. You could try a press cloth, so you could have it from the inside and put a press cloth in there and iron. It probably is better to have done those before I sewed them together if you're going to use a press cloth. Or if it's all joined together, you can use a ham, and that will help you to get that curved shape like this. And then you can use a normal iron because the interfacing will be falling away from the iron there, so you won't be touching too much of the interfacing with your iron. So you can press a seam with a normal iron, and you can see there the difference between this one that's not pressed open and this one where you can hardly see the join. The other thing you can try is a mini iron, so that way you can get right in along that seam and not touch any of the interfacing at all, and you can get right up into the corner. So it depends what equipment you've got. So you can try a mini iron, a press cloth, or a ham. So once you've got your two sides of your hat, you're then going to join them two halves together with a seam along the top of your hat. It's useful to just spread out the thickness of your seam allowances from the top, so make sure you've got a bit of seam allowance on each side so that you've not folded it all to one side, because it will be too thick. So keep the 1.5 seam allowance. You definitely need to have done all your pressing at this point and matched up the seams and the notches. So when it's all pressed out using the ham, then the center point is right there, but it's really smooth, so you wouldn't know that that was the center point. I've marked my side pieces with a pin just so that I know which ones are the side ones and which ones are the front ones, and that will make it easier for me to put the two pieces together, the hat and the hat lining. Step 4 is to put together the brim. So you need to put some interfacing onto the one brim, and you're going to stitch the centre back seam of the hat brim and the hat facing, and then they'll be ready to join together. You're going to sew here and the same on the hat facing. The rest of the brim section is to sew the outer edge, so that's all the way around here, and then we can flip the brim out to the right side. And you really need to take some time to press the brim so that you don't have the facing rolling out onto the outside. So you're going to sew all the way around and then do a really careful press. Next, you're going to clip the curves. So we're going to take some little V shapes out of the fabric so that when it's turned the right way, it's not got too much of that seam allowance all rucked up behind the seam line. Be careful not to chop your stitches. These scissors are super, they've got really sharp tips, so I can get quite close without using the real V end of the scissors. I can use the tips to take out, and I'm going to do this all the way around the hat so that I can turn it out the right way. Okay, the hat's turned in the right way. I'm just using a like a hand press tool. It's by Clover. I have put it in the products list, but because it's got a curved edge, not a pointy edge, it's really good for working that curved edge of the rim. It's also quite good for collars as well, or anything, pockets that have got a curved bottom on, any of those where you want to press out the 2 layers but you don't want to spike it or get pointy bits. This is got a curved edge on, which just helps you. It's also good if you're quilting because you can use it to press seams. It's got a little bit of a sharp edge. Okay, we're now going to go and press that under the iron. I'm just wearing my silicone fingers because I want to hold the material very close to the edge, but I want to make sure that I don't burn my fingers on the hot fabric. But it's also good because they've got little grips on. You also get a little bit of traction for rolling the edge round so that the bottom doesn't come round onto the top. You can get a really accurate press. The last part of the brim section is to just sew the raw edges on the inside of the hat band with a 1 centimetre seam allowance and on a large stitch as a basting stitch. Number 6 is to pin the brim to the right side of the hat, so you'll be getting what looks like a hat, and you need to use that centre line on the inside to go from the centre back seam and then find the centre front seam, so you've got that centre line running down the centre of your hat. Pin it all the way round. It's a good idea to pin with the pins with the glass heads facing in, because you're going to be working along this curve, so you don't want to scratch yourself, and there will be an element of easing in, so you're going to be putting pins in, finding out where you've got a little ruck, where you've got a little balloon, like there I've got a bit extra, so I'm going to sort of put a pin in the middle and then try and ease out some of the fabric on either side. So this takes a little bit of time, but it really is attaching the 2 main parts of your hat. Right, the hat is, outer hat is made, and we just need to clip into these seams, so it's back to the sharp scissors, because now we're going through quite a few layers and we don't want to snip the stitching. But we need the hat to have just a little bit more movement around the brim. Number 7 is to put together the top of the hat, which we did earlier because I was showing you how to press and do some other techniques. You need to leave a space open in one of the seams so that you can turn the hat the right side out, and then we need to put the 2 pieces together, sew them and then turn them the right side out. Okay, so we're going to put the hat right sides together and find the centre line again to match up with the centre line of my hat. Right, that's there. And then we're going to stitch over the brim, so we're going to tuck all of the brim in. Just to hold it in place while I show you. And all of that brim goes in. Okay, and And then I'm going to match up the seams and sew around. And then I can turn it back out through the gap that I've left. Like this. It's really important you keep the 1 centimetre seam allowance, otherwise the stitch line from adding the brim will be showing on the right side. Although if you're adding a ribbon, you can cover up any stitch line that's showing. Now, this is the skillful sewing. You're going to need to use your fingers to feel that the brim is lying flat underneath, and as soon as you can feel a little bit of a pucker, there's one, you're going to need to just work that round. Okay, keep going and feeling the fabric under your finger to check that you've got the brim lying nice and flat. So we're going to go all the way around, turn out the hat, and then it's time to decorate it. Ta-da! There we are. So you can use the presser if you like, just to try and get that brim flat. And then inside you'll need to slip stitch the gap. You could add ribbon to the band. You can put on a rose, you can put on a bow. There are instructions on the pattern how to make a bow that you can put on here. I'm going to decorate my toddler hat and then I'm going to show you a photograph, but you can decide how to decorate your own. The fabric is a Liberty Lawn, quite unusual pattern for Liberty, a little bit different, a bit more modern. And all the products and tools that I've used are listed below. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you are going to make the Mabel tiered dress, then really another hour to make the hat is really well worth it. Thanks very much for watching. See you again soon.